Hello, welcome to Matters of DeCorum. I'm Scott Corum. This is what matters to me. I want to talk about villains, uh, because when you're running a lot of games, or writing or designing, the villain's kind of the core of making a game session relatable. You can run sessions where the enemy, the opposition that you're having people overcome, natural disasters or uh, things that are not necessarily based on one individual or a group of individuals whose evil intentions forward the goals of the hero. But a good villain gets the blood pumping, it's easy and somewhat expected to motivate the players at the table through the use of a villain or a number of them. One thing that I like to do in order to make a villain someone that can really motivate those player characters, someone who can actually push along a plot. I like my villains relatable. I do. They a villain that you can relate to, a villain that you could have a conversation with, where you don't automatically think that everything they're saying is just completely wrong, is a joy to have. A villain who can make the heroes question their own motivations, morals, and ethics is a villain that is a high tier, high quality villain. And they don't all have to be that good. They don't all have to be that kind of villain. You can have a villain that is well aware that they are acting in an immoral and unethical fashion. A villain who is unabashedly evil and is doing their evil because they love the evil, because that is how they prefer to do things. They're a really good character in Spider-Man comics. What is it, Stegron? Uh, Basically a highly evolved dinosaur. I can't remember if it was someone who was evolved into that form or someone that was naturally just occurred that way. But he was genetically turning people into dinosaurs. And Spider-Man just stops the fight for a second and confronts him and goes, with the kind of skill that you are using to turn people into dinosaurs, you could cure cancer. And Stegron's response is, I don't want to cure cancer. I want to turn people into dinosaurs. That's a good villain too, because there's absolutely no question that villain needs to get their face pushed in. That's a villain that needs to get punched repeatedly until they stop turning people into dinosaurs. And that is that's a ground level, brick solid, foundational villain. You can scatter a handful of those throughout your campaign, and no one's going to complain. Great villains to have. But then you look at a villain like, say, Lex Luthor from, I guess from Superman the Animated Series on, where they stopped him being a raving, bald lunatic in a green and purple powered armor trying to take over the world randomly, right and left. Oh, God, it's some of the early Luthor stories, ridiculous, and put him in a suit at the top of a building with his name on it, with a financial backing and a purpose, and Clancy Brown's voice, which just boom, I can relate to this, Luthor, because we knew he was the villain. We knew he was wrong, but his power was being able to make us question that every so often. Superman knew that Luthor was behind all this stuff. Could he prove it? No. Lex Luthor became president uh, because maybe there was some villainous stuff about him, but he also had some really good points to make and was eloquent in how he made them. he eventually started trying to kill people, and things went downhill. And started injecting himself with kryptonite-infused Bane venom, and it all went bad. But there were moments of shocking clarity, and those moments of clarity where you're having this discussion, and he's not entirely wrong sometimes, and that's a villain that you need to worry about. The villain who isn't entirely wrong. You may be facing a villain who isn't wrong at all, although that's rare. I've had parties have to stop in the middle of a fight to go, hang on a second. Is what this person doing really that bad? Are we the bad guys here? I love that question. I love that question coming up in game, mid-fight or between fights. Whenever that question comes up, there's a discussion. That is when people are going to plumb their characters and look into their hearts and the hearts of their characters and go, okay, hang on a second. So this guy is trying to do this, but that's not something we don't want done. Why are we fighting? And if you can get to that moment, I mean, it's hard to explain. It's hard to describe how rewarding it is when your players stop a course of action and start to think about what they're doing. They may have been doing it, that there may be thoughtful in the actions going in. They may have been just gotten stuck in the cookie cutter hero villain thing. That happens. Do you expect a certain dichotomy? It's like, well, okay, we're the heroes. That's the villain. We're good. They're bad. We go beat them up. That's the process. When you shake that up, oh, that's a lot of fun. That is a lot of fun, because then you have to peel back some layers and see who is actually standing where. And that gets to be very revealing. A revealing of the player characters, revealing of the villain, revealing of the players to a certain degree. And people work out a little bit about where your brain is at when you do that sort of thing. It's a really deep form of communication, actually, and has always been healthy for groups that I've done this in. Problem is the villain ultimately, unless you are planning a full-on reversal, planning a, well, no, we're working for this guy now, and all those people that were sending us after him, well, those are the bad guys, and so that's happened in game. Gosh, some of the best games I've ever had happened as a result of turnarounds exactly like that. It's like, well, I just showed up in this world, and these people befriended me, and so I'm helping them fight these people. Those people aren't that bad. Let's readdress this and see what I had, because I only had experience with this group before. That blew my mind. First time that happened. I've helped other people get to that state, but that's when you put on the brakes mid game, flip around. If you're not planning something like that, if you are not putting the possibility of something like that being in your game, no matter how well you design your villain or how properly you lay out their path and how firmly you build their foundations, they have to be wrong. At some level, in some way, they have to be wrong. And as long as you're not too involved in your villains, that's fine. That's the risk of putting a little bit too much into your villain planning, as I've done from time to time. Uh, because as the game master, as the person sitting at the head of the table who knows what's going on, you have a very firm grasp on that villain's motivations. And you can have engineered that villain's motivations to be Well, this is understandable. This is something that it's even relatable. Maybe what they're trying to do isn't that bad. And maybe their goal is noble, in fact. Maybe they have a proper moral and ethical goal to seek. I want to see to it that nobody goes hungry. That's not a bad goal. That's not a bad goal at all. I want to end hunger. I want to end homelessness. I want to make absolutely sure that everybody has everything they need. That's amazing. It's not the ends that you need to worry about with that villain, it's the means. I want to make sure nobody goes hungry, so I'm going to murder half of everyone, and then everyone else will be just fine. Now we have a problem. I want to restore the environment, so I'll just have to destroy humanity. Good old Ra's al Ghul staple from way back. If the ends is noble, the means must be flawed. If the means doesn't seem that flawed, the ends has to be terrible. And either way you do that can make for a great villain. Good ends, bad means. I'm going to save the world by killing half of humanity. Good means bad end. I am going to build a group of charities and start fundraising so that I can raise money and awareness of people's difficulties so that I can eventually create a virus that will wipe out every human of undesirable traits that drives me insane. Yeah, that's a villain. They gotta go. No matter how many pancake breakfasts or car washes you got to blow up to make that not happen. That's a thing. If your villain has a noble end and is following an ethical path to get there, I want to see everyone on Earth fed properly. I want to see an end to hunger, malnutrition, starvation. I want everyone to have plenty. So, I am going to start fundraising like you wouldn't believe. I am going to go out there, shake hands, kiss babies, and make sure everyone knows that this is a problem and working together, we can solve it. I will help people build farm infrastructure. I will put together the operations and organizations that will make this world hunger free. That's not a villain. That is in fact the hero uh, of this story. If not the hero, at least that is a backdrop character against which you could have a group of player characters who don't want to see this happen. There are games based around player characters who are trying to see to it that things end up worse at the end. There's the evil player character game, which can be fun. I mean, there's this guy, he's trying to feed the world, and he's doing it through moral and ethical means, making sure everything is sustainable and continue on, that it's going to benefit mankind. We absolutely have to stop that. A table full of villains, taking that guy down, that's hilarious. I want to see that. Uh, Other than that, if you've got a group of people who are heroes, people who are being motivated by a villain's evil plans, nothing about that guy's plans are evil. He could be the most evil looking son of a bitch out there. I like to refer to Bond movies. Some of my references are becoming dated as a uh, result of that, because let's face it, not as many people have seen all the Bond movies that I have. But one of my favorite Bond villain from what is ashamedly my favorite Bond film, Moonraker. Is it a good Bond film? No, but it's my favorite. Hugo Drax, philanthropist, billionaire, genius, orchestrator of a tremendous space program, which he is using to eliminate all human life on Earth other than the scant few he has brought to his space station so he can repopulate the planet. Let's take that guy and take out the genocide. And say he uses these resources that he has to create space farms, to asteroid mine, to bring wealth and materials to the Earth, and use that leverage to feed the starving masses. There's probably not going to be any jiggery pokery that's going to make Bond have to go after him. He's not going to. Is he going to steal back a space shuttle? He might have to steal back a space shuttle at some point in time. It's just how it works. One of my Moonrakers broke down. I had to get this one back from the government. They weren't going to give it back to me, so I stole it. I stole my own spaceship back. And yeah, some people died in that, and that's really unfortunate. But if I'm going to feed everyone in the world, you can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. That's not necessarily to do this without killing anyone or causing anyone harm. Maybe he found a better way to do it. He stole the space shuttle back, but didn't kill the pilots and crew of the plane that was transporting the shuttle. Maybe he stole it when it was on the ground or found another way to do it. Terrible Bond film. The shuttle heist at the beginning just, yeah, because they would never carry the shuttle fueled and all of that. It takes more than one guy in the cockpit to launch it off. So he's stolen a multi-million-dollar piece of equipment, which ultimately belonged to him anyway. And does someone have to go look into that? Yeah, someone probably does. And they discover he's building a structure in space, which, well, there are treaties that say whether you can and can't do that, and there's certain limitations, although we're getting into an age now where a private organization could absolutely probably manage to put up a sizable space station if they were using it for humanitarian purposes and eventually open it up to inspection so that the people could assure themselves it's not a weapons platform and it's not violating space nuclear treaties. Okay, that's probably not that bad. So why is that a Bond film? It's not. Let's make it one, though. How do we use a moral and ethical villain? Someone who has done something wrong and may take overreaching steps in their plan, but ultimately their means and their end aren't something that the heroes wouldn't want to see. How do you make that into an adventure? The villain is the person sending you after that person. The representative of some farming conglomerate or a conglomeration of food corporations that would much prefer things remain exactly the way they are so they can retain control over social groups in society, keep their narrative moving, push their brands, increase their profit. That guy's going to give food away for free, and the value of the food that we are selling people for a good amount of money is going to go right out the bottom. What kind of world's it going to be if everyone just gets the food that they need and doesn't have to go buy it at exorbitant prices? No, let's hire some people, tell them that that guy is doing some shady stuff, and you need to go take down the philanthropist because he's ultimately going to, and some of what they're told, what they're going to tell the PCs, probably lies. Oh, his plan is so much more devious than that. He's killed hundreds, if not thousands of people in this. You have to go stop him. And if the PCs look into it, well, we haven't found any deaths. That's how good he is. If you do enough digging, you'll find things. Have you found anything? Because we'd really like you to find some stuff while you dig. It's not bad, actually. That'd be an interesting game where you find out that the guy And I've run games similar to this. You find out that the guy that you're after, oh, that guy's got to be the villain because there's a thing and we didn't like the thing. So we broke the thing and now we're after the guy. What if the thing wasn't all that bad and you just didn't like it when you saw it? That sort of thing happens. You might accidentally at war with Sweden. So ultimately, comes down to it. Your villain can have good ends and terrible means. Or your villain can have a terrible ends with good means. They can have terrible means and a terrible end all at the same time. That's the classic. That's the one that you really want to. I'm murdering a lot of people so that in the end I can murder everyone. Beautiful. That is someone that's got to be stopped clearly. I'm turning people into dinosaurs. Yeah. Why? Because I really want to do it. That beat that villain up. If your villain doesn't have a terrible means or a terrible ends from those means, then that's not your villain. Doesn't mean that person doesn't belong in your game. That's a good backdrop character. That's a good patron. That is a good red herring. That is a good target of unfair targeting by some other person who ends up being the villain. Classic turnaround, some twists, some plot lines there. Not bad. I put a little bit too much effort into villains in my head that turned out not to be the bad guy when everything was said and done. And I like me a subverted villain trope, but uh, you still need to have, you might need to have a villain. This guy is going through perfectly moral means, and he is trying to feed the world. He's got a perfectly moral ends. And you start looking into him, and there's people after that he doesn't even know about. This guy, this person over here that is trying to do all this good stuff, this woman with the cancer charity, and that guy over there who's just trying to make sure that education is available. And there's these subversive elements that are trying to stop them from getting what they want. And they're getting frustrated because just things don't seem to be working, but that's because there's someone jury rigging their systems or taking elements out of their supply chains so that they'll fail and everything can be as miserable or profitable for someone else. And when you get a group of player characters that are running interference for people who never realize that interference is being run for them, why can't we drop this person's operations? We've done everything we can. Well, our people keep going to the hospital. Can't tell you what. Some folks out there keep throwing them down flights of stairs. I don't know what to do about it. Well, do these people work for the charity? No, we have no idea who they are. That's a villain who's got a problem, and then you got a game. Villains with problems. That is your role-playing game. It doesn't have to be a villain. It doesn't have to be the villain, the opposition doesn't have to be a person. You can have a game where someone is trying to help a charity or a supply chain by thinking outside the box and making sure that supplies get there even when it doesn't look it. Maybe it's a snowstorm or an avalanche or an earthquake. Maybe there are some other disasters that bring things that need to be overcome. Maybe your player characters are a rescue team. Maybe you're running a pastiche of the Thunderbirds. I want to run a pastiche of the Thunderbirds so bad sometime where it's not villain of the week. Maybe there's an overarching villain in the background waiting to spring, but in the meantime, it's this building's on fire and we don't have any equipment that can get people off the top floor. Can you help us? That'd be a that would be a great game to run. Big fan of the Thunderbirds. If you haven't watched any of the old Jerry Anderson series or the newer version on Netflix, which was actually a really good adaptation, I highly recommend it. But when it comes to the villain game, which is admittedly probably going to be the vast majority of your role-playing games, Villains got to be wrong. Their ends has to be terrible, or their means has to be terrible. They can both be terrible, but something's got to be terrible. And ultimately, defeating the villain would make the world a better place. When it comes right down to it, that is your measurement. Would defeating this villain make the world a better place? The answer is yes. You've got a good villain. Proceed to punch their face in. Gosh, thank you for following me along on this ramble. I went some places there. If you enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up. If you did enjoy the video, give me a thumbs down. Feedback is feedback. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, why not? My channel is awesome. I invite you to hit that subscribe button. If you do, you might want to hit the notification bell so that you're alerted when my videos become available. Anything else you'd like to hear me talk about, your experience with villains, when a villain worked out right, especially when a villain didn't work out right, leave me a comment below. Other things you'd like to hear me talk about, subjects you'd like to hear me cover, leave me a comment. I will love getting your comment. You'll love leaving me one. If you would like to help the channel out in a more substantial manner, I invite you to hit me up my Patreon page, www.patreon.com/ScottCorum. Consider donating. Absolutely anything helps. Allows me to make better videos more often. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching. I'm Scott Corum. This is what has mattered to me. I will see you next time on the next Matters of DeCorum.